liberty stand. Religious liberty is not simply, as we all know, about legal safeguards. It is also about fostering a culture in which faith can thrive.
A conservative activist and former congressional candidate says every day has been like Christmas since the arrival of the Trump-Vance administration.
Monday marked the second anniversary of the toxic train derailment that devastated the small Ohio community of East Palestine. Vice President J.D. Vance led the contingent that toured the town that he used to represent as a U.S. Senator. Also on hand was Lee Zeldin, Donald Trump's newly confirmed head of the Environmental Protection Agency. Vance told a gathering of first responders and local elected officials that the town, quote, will not be forgotten, will not be left behind. He also said they were in it for the long haul and lamented that it is a tragedy and a shame that the cleanup wasn't finished during the last administration. Janet Porter is a former Ohio congressional candidate and founder and president of Faith to Action.
What's really amazing, when it took President Biden over a year to get there, to even show up for the people who've been devastated by this toxic train derailment. And as we see, the vice president's just barely sworn in, made it such a priority to get there and to make sure that the people there get the help they need.
Porter says we've seen the same thing by this administration in other devastated areas.
When President Trump went to California and says, listen, you know what? You have a government that lets your water reserves run dry, that defunded the fire department, that prioritized fish over people, but where's a new sheriff in town? He went to North Carolina and he looked at the hurricane victims. We're not going to screen out the people and say if you're a Trump supporter, you're not going to get the help you need. That's like FEMA did. It's night and day from what we've experienced for the last 4 years. Every day is like Christmas.
I'm Chad Groening.
For American Family News, I'm Rusty P.
Hello, my name is Andy Miller, and I'm the president of Wesley Biblical Seminary based in Ridgeland, Mississippi. We are developing trusted leaders for faithful churches, and we do that based in the authority of Scripture and in the reality that Christians can be transformed. We do that also through bachelor's, master's, and doctoral degrees. We'd love for you to learn more about Wesley Biblical Seminary at wbs.edu, where we're developing trusted leaders for faithful churches.
Welcome to Today's Issues, offering a Christian response to the issues of the day. Here's your host, Tim Wildman, president of the American Family Association.
Hey, good morning, everybody, and welcome to Today's Issues. That's the name of this here show on the American Family Radio Network. Today's Wednesday, February the 5th, 2025, so January's gone. Thank goodness. Well, I don't like January myself because of the cold.
I wonder why.
Yeah, because of the cold weather. I just need to stop complaining about that and just enjoy every minute and every hour and every month that God gives me.
And you live
that needs to be my attitude.
Yeah, you do that. I look forward to seeing that change.
And remember, you're in Mississippi, so it changes, and you get plenty of warm weather. 81 Saturday here.
That's right.
In February.
Introduce the panel here.
Yes, I will. I'll introduce the meteorologist, Wesley Wildman. You just heard there. And
I got some thoughts I want to share before we get started, but you go ahead and finish out.
We want you to share. That's why we do this show, so you can share. Yeah. We'll do that momentarily.
If it's that important, don't even introduce me. Just get right to it.
Do you have a word?
No, I don't have a word.
Okay. I wasn't going to say a word from the Lord.
Yeah. Okay, well, then in that case,
because I don't know what you're going to say. Let me introduce Ed Vitagliano. You guys jumped in on me before I had a chance.
We did. We jumped.
Ed Vitagliano, who just jumped.
Like a spider on a cricket.
You didn't slap me with a tariff. That's all I got to say. Okay, Ed, Wesley, this is a professional program, people. Yes. It only gets better. I'm Tim Wildman with our newsman, Christopher Woodward. Good morning, Chris.
In defense of meteorologist Wesley, I have to say that 1 in 3 of today's on-air broadcast meteorologists are graduates of our Mississippi State University. So representing.
There you go.
What now?
Yes, 1 in 3 people today on air doing meteorology are graduates of MSU.
In the United States?
Yes, sir.
Sorry, absolutely.
I don't believe that.
I don't believe it either,
It's
Chris.
from Mississippi State. Trust me, I'm
Where
a
are you
newsman.
getting this information?
It's Mississippi State has promoted this before.
Okay, well, I don't understand why 1 out of 3 5-star quarterbacks can't be from Mississippi State.
Well,
That's what I
you can't be
but
graded everything.
what good is meteorologists
We're the
do
Alabama
us?
of meteorology.
So is that a serious statistic?
Oh,
One
yes.
out of three meteorologists, on-air meteorologists, is a Mississippi State graduate?
That is correct.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm stunned by that.
Way to go, by the way. More cowbell.
All right.
All right, so
Well,
Wesley's
you know,
gotta
we don't
work.
have time to investigate that. We just got
No, it's true. No, it's really true. I'll post it on our Facebook page.
All right, Wesley, what did you want to share?
I am not getting tired of winning, as Trump mentioned in 2016.
Yeah.
But am I having a hard time keeping up with winning?
Yes.
There's a lot of winning going on.
There is. President Trump is wheeling and dealing.
Well, and I just want to announce
Around the
here
globe.
on the program. Now, our listeners understand that of our 160-something radio stations, we're headquartered. Our flagship station is here in Tupelo, Mississippi. I just wanted to announce that Tupelo is taking over Columbus, Mississippi. And we're going to turn it into the Sandals Resort
Of the Tom Bigby?
of the Tom Bigby. We're just taking
Tom
it over.
Bigby River, for
Taking
those who
over.
don't know. You guys are mocking, but well, you're playfully having fun.
We're having fun with it.
with President Trump's.
I'm enjoying the chaotic move in the right direction.
Yeah.
But it's both. We are moving in the right direction, but man, is it chaos.
Yeah. Well, I tell you what, so much to talk about today with, every day there's so much to talk about with respect to what President Trump and his administration and what they're doing.
It's been a full month.
Do what?
It hadn't even been a month yet.
True.
Yeah, and just every day is some, 3 or 4 things that you just stand up and cheer.
Yeah.
You just stand up and cheer. At least we do, because they're great for our country. And President Trump, again, continues to move at breakneck speed. So yesterday, Chris, in Washington, D.C., what was the lead story?
Well, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu came to the White House late yesterday afternoon for a meet and greet with his friend and counterpart, President Donald Trump. They talked about a number of issues, and people have talked a lot about what they had to say. One of the issues that has been trending since about 6 o'clock last night was President Trump saying, "We will take over Gaza. We will help rebuild Gaza." He said it in different ways. A lot of people are focusing on the word, quote, "take over Gaza." Not everybody's a fan of that idea, but here is some audio from President Trump talking about taking over Gaza and some other things. Clip 1.
We'll own it and be responsible for dismantling all of the dangerous unexploded bombs and other weapons on the site, level the site and get rid of the destroyed buildings, level it out, create an economic development that will supply unlimited numbers of jobs and housing for the people of the area.
So he said, "We'll own it," if you didn't catch that at the beginning of the podcast.
Okay. This is an amazing outside-the-box plan that, or as I told somebody, outside the tinderbox thinking that is going on here with President Trump. Sometimes with President Trump, he says such outlandish things that you just go, what in the world is he talking about? What is he thinking about? But, and when I first heard this, I was going, wow, is he joking or is he serious? And upon further contemplation about what President Trump said here, I think he's onto something. Okay, I'm not gonna. What we're talking about is the Gaza Strip. That's the Gaza Strip is a strip of land on the Mediterranean Sea, beautiful beaches, just beautiful beaches, that the Israeli government basically gave to the Palestinians, the Arabs who wanted to live there and govern themselves. But I don't know how many people live there, 1 million, 2 million, something like that. But because of what happened on October was it the 7th?
7th.
2023, when Hamas, based in Gaza, decided to butcher 1,100 Israelis, including some Americans, just brutally murdered them on that bloody day. Ever since then, Israel has just been leveling buildings and infrastructure and tunnels, and they're going after Hamas with a vengeance. And there's been a lot of collateral damage. There's been a lot of people die in Gaza. It's just, it's horrible now. And the people of Gaza are not going to be able to rebuild it. Okay, it's leveled for miles and miles and miles and miles. These people don't have the money to rebuild that Gaza. Plus, so for what President Trump is suggesting or recommending or advocating, I don't know what word you would use exactly, is that, this is the way I understood it, guys. Do you got any more audio that he mentions on this?
Not on this specific issue.
Is that the Arab countries in and around Israel, namely Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and Jordan, those are the ones I mentioned. I think President Trump mentioned Egypt and Jordan. Take in these their fellow Arabs, the Palestinians, and incorporate them into their countries, and then the Americans take over that strip of land called Gaza, and I guess spend 10 to 20 years. Now, this is very forward-thinking, futuristic, cleaning it up, and then turning it into a resort area along the Mediterranean Sea, and bringing peace to the region that's not been there before. That's basically what President Trump, that's his vision.
Yeah, and I did look it up. There are 2 million people. I don't know how many, because of the war, they may be scattered somewhat, but the population of the Gaza Strip was 2 million. Gaza City was about 600,000. Let me, in terms of my own opinion, let me just kind of lay this out. You know, like when you do pros and cons, you know, about going, hey, let's go on vacation here, or let's buy this, or let's do that. Okay, so let me do the cons first. In terms of
the cons
this
of this proposal.
Gotcha. Okay. First of all, the Trump agenda has always been focused on cutting government spending. This is going to be tremendously expensive. Second of all, I'm not sure that once it is rebuilt, how do you keep Hamas from moving back in? Maybe that's what President Trump meant by
that was my first thought.
We'll own it. Third, I would say this is going to sound a little bit ugly, but I don't know the average Arab man on the street, how much they care about being an entrepreneurial kind of, mindset, because they're going to have to run it afterwards. Okay, so
no,
those are kind of the cons.
Let me add one to that, though.
Okay.
And also, it does run up against America First idea, too.
Yes.
Okay.
Right. Yeah. So on the pro side, I agree with you, Tim. I would never have dreamt of this idea. So you pull this off, and to me, that's Pulitzer Prize winning idea. If you can pull this off, President Trump I'm talking about. Second of all, you could, in making this almost outlandish suggestion, use it as kind of a way to bargain with Saudi Arabia and maybe one or two other Arab nations and say, all right, fine, you don't want the United States, quote unquote, owning it. You pitch in. Let's make this a regional enterprise. I think personally what President Trump meant by we'll own it is we'll take responsibility.
Yes, that's
for
what
it.
he meant.
I don't think he meant we're going to plant the American flag.
Right.
52nd state.
Yes, 52nd state. So on the pro side, it would also perhaps undercut groups like Hamas. If you had a promising a profitable enterprise in the Gaza Strip where they are prospering, then other Palestinians, quote unquote, other Arabs, for example, in the West Bank and, the Palestinian territories may say, you know what, we want that too. And because the only way really to undercut the ideology of Hamas and Hezbollah is to prosper those people. But then I come back to the con side of it. We kind of tried that in Iraq. You know, we're gonna airlift democracy and capitalism into another area in the Middle East, and it didn't work too well. So
Afghanistan's a good example.
Afghanistan.
I just turned 43. We were in Afghanistan for half my lifetime, and we have nothing to show for it.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
And Afghanistan is a perfect example of the fact. Now, there were some Afghans that wanted to go to college. They wanted to live Western lives. Mm-hmm. But guess what? The tribal leaders wouldn't let them. Eventually, the Taliban took over and reinstituted Sharia. So I don't know. This, to me, could be one of the greatest things we've seen in 200 years, or it could be just another failed experiment in the Middle East. I don't know. Wesley, what do you think?
I'm looking at Brent Scher from Daily Wire. He posted a picture of what I guess his mock-up of what that would look like, and it's y'all can look right here. That looks beautiful.
It would be. There are some Arab cities that are just gorgeous in the Middle East.
Oh, they got the money.
Yeah.
I mean, the oil money. You've seen Dubai?
Right. Dubai is what I was thinking about.
Oh, well, they could turn it into a Dubai of the Mediterranean. Now, I just don't know how this suggestion by President Trump is going to work out. He suggested they change the Mediterranean Sea to the Trump Sea. The name of it. And I don't know.
That's probably a bridge too far.
I think it's going to fly.
Gulf of Trump.
Gulf of Trump.
Gulf of Trump, the Trump
Persian
Sea.
Gulf up now.
Well, listen, here's why I disagree that this is like nation building like Iraq and Afghanistan, although I understand how the comparison could be made, what you guys are bringing up, which is not America first.
Right.
Getting involved in countries around the world and trying to impose our will or
our ideas.
And, bring democracy to a place that they've never had it before, that kind of thing. I think with respect to the Gaza Strip, which is owned by Israel.
Right.
It isn't owned by Israel gave it to the Palestinian people.
Well, then they need to take it back at this point.
Well, that's what Trump's talking about.
Yeah.
Basically, working with Israel, taking that piece of land and turn it into something special and profitable and an international resort and tourist destination. That's what he's talking about. Now, whether that can ever happen, everything starts with a vision, with a dream. But I would say, here's what I would say is, what do you got to lose? Nothing else seemingly has worked. And if you're the people there in Gaza, and you can move to Egypt or Jordan or Saudi Arabia and have a new life and somewhere to start. Again, have you seen pictures of the aerial shots from Gaza?
It's destroyed.
It's destroyed, and these people are poor.
Yeah.
They're going to be living like Mel Gibson in, what was that movie?
Mad Max.
They're going to be living like Mad Max over there for the foreseeable future, and that's going to only foster more hatred and more terrorism.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say that what President Trump is, if he can get them resettled to somewhere else besides that land, get them out of that land. Now they're going to say this is our land.
Yeah.
Too, and listen, you're never going to resolve the feelings between the Jews and the Arabs about whose land it is altogether. Now there are a lot of Jews and Arabs, the vast majority of them in Israel, that live in peace with one another.
Yeah.
Okay? They live in peace with one another. Now, they don't necessarily hang out all the time, but they live in peace with one another, Arabs and Jews. But you got the people down in Gaza, basically, who support Hamas, and Hamas is an internationally recognized terrorist organization and has been for decades. They live and breathe, hate Jews, well, they basically hate the Jews and want to drive them into the sea, and that's what they get up to do every day. And I don't know how you get rid of that Well, I know how you get rid of it. You kill it. That ideology. You try to kill it. And so if you can't, you move it out. You use brute force if you have to. So I think that's what President Trump is trying to set a vision, if you will. So I don't see it as nation building per se. I see it as a way to bring peace and stability. If the Americans basically, and I don't see it all as government money, although there would be government money, U.S. federal tax law. I've seen it too more as, okay, can you get other countries to buy into this vision? Maybe private businesses buy into this vision. You know what I'm saying? It's just thinking outside the box. But you're talking about 10 years of just cleaning up the place, and that's with all kind of heavy machinery, and then I don't know what you do with the people. You got to get the people play. The 2 million people. You got to get them housed somewhere. In the world. Anyway, that's it's
well. If Trump can pull it off, it would be extraordinary. I mean, it would be something for the history books.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Oh yeah, we'd be reading about it. They'll be reading about it. 500 years from now in their history books.
If the Lord tarries.
Yes, if the Lord tarries.
What if the Lord doesn't tarry?
Then
you won't be.
Then we don't care.
Yeah. We'll
Okay,
be
then
singing
why are we
victory
even
in
talking
Jesus.
about
We'll be in heaven.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll be.
Well,
in heaven.
because
we won't care. We don't care about anything in heaven.
Because well, what I'm saying is, if the Lord comes back,
yes. Chris threw this in there.
Then time
Thank Chris for the
on
tarry.
Earth, there's not enough time left to rebuild Gaza.
We don't use tarry enough, or stow, as President Wildman once told me.
Guys, we've got to get to the winning. Okay,
Go, Wesley.
Pam Bondi.
Lay it out. Lay it out.
I'll give you one.
Give us the wins since yesterday.
Well, Pam Bondi.
Pam Bondi, the new Attorney General.
All right, she was confirmed. That was a win.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have any audio on that?
We do not, but I can tell you one surprising angle to her confirmation. One Democrat voted for her, and that was Pennsylvania Senator John Fetterman.
Oh, yeah.
One Democrat that voted
John
for her.
Hoodie Fetterman.
She was passed 54-46.
He strikes me as a fair-minded Democrat. He's still a
Blue
lefty.
collar, the old school.
Old school. When Republicans vote for these kinds of nominations, it's usually 15-0. Now the Republicans say, "All right, well, that's what we wanted, to nominate, so we're voting."
Yep.
And that's what Fetterman strikes me as, that kind of person.
And then, I can move on.
going.
I got another one.
No, that was a win.
That was a win.
Pam Bondi's confirmed. Go ahead.
And then another one was when President Trump signed an executive order to audit the U.S. aid and the USA to see where our tax dollars are being spent, and as a result, we uncovered.
Thanks, Elon.
Thanks, Elon. That's right. We uncovered millions and millions of dollars that was being spent on DEI and transgender stuff. I may make it worse. On top of all of that,
those are wins, though. You just paid.
Yes.
These are wins because we uncovered how our millions of dollars were being spent toward the LGBT agenda.
Just wasted
and
around
DEI.
the world.
But that's what I was going to say.
Unbelievable.
On the topic itself is wasteful. Furthermore, it was for other countries.
Yes.
Yes.
I do have some
Transgenderism
sound
other
about
countries.
this. Because a group of Democrats, including Elizabeth Warren, Representative Ayanna Pressley of Massachusetts, they all gathered together to badmouth
Did they
Elon
gather
Musk.
together?
They did. They assembled.
Oh,
Is that better, Dad? Simple.
They
Yeah,
assembled.
They gathered together like a cookout.
They wanted to bash Elon Musk for even daring to say we should cut these federal spending amounts to various countries for all kinds of gibberish. But I've got some reaction to this from Alabama Senator Katie Britt, who says Democrats' priorities are clearly out of line here. Clip 6.
Democrats are out having an actual meltdown, a 4-year-old meltdown, not over dollars that they believe should be going to our veterans who have served this country honorably, not for dollars that they believe should be helping a single mom get on their feet, not for dollars that they believe should be securing our border and keeping Americans safe and secure, but they are crying over these dollars.
Now, for people not aware of this story, as Caroline Levitt outlined outside the White House earlier this week.
Who was that we were just hearing?
That was Alabama Senator Katie Britt.
Okay.
But Caroline Levitt, the new White House press secretary, told reporters this week that we're spending money on all kinds of things, including like a transgender comic book. We're spending money overseas on LGBTQ operas, all kinds of things that taxpayers who were already taxed way too much are funding overseas.
It was like a comic book in like El Salvador or
Yes.
something strange. It's no, listen.
I collected that one.
You did. It's collector's.
I'm a
collector's
collector.
item.
Yeah.
If it's still in the wrapper, you got a lot of money.
I'm a collector of foreign comic books.
You're collecting a comic book
It's
about
kind of an
transgenders?
unusual pastime.
I don't know if that joke's going to age well because it had to do with LGBTQ.
Right. Yeah, I just got the LG part.
Okay.
Yeah. And so, no, I anyway,
No,
forget that.
it's money that has been spent to drive the left-wing radical sex and gender ideology
with no
around
accountability,
the world with zero accountability.
And Elon Musk, thank God for Elon Musk. I know there are a lot of people worried about what role he's going to play, and is he going to divert President Trump's attention off to something that away from the America First agenda?
He's actually helped him to be better on the LGBTQ issue than Trump was in 2016.
Now, USAID is not a government agency, right? They just spend government money.
Yes.
All right. So what's bizarre is that the left is complaining about Elon that he's not elected.
Right.
And here and now they're defending an organization that's not elected.
You know, and of course Harris was put in to run for president. She wasn't elected to run for president.
And this is the party to protect democracy.
Yeah, right. A lot of
All right, we're going to take a time out right here. You're listening to the radio program Today's Issues on the American Family Radio Network. I'm Tim with Ed, Wesley, and Chris. We're going to visit with M.D. Perkins when we get back. He just got back recently from California, where his brother lost his house in a fire.
It's my turn.
Here is your host for My Turn, Don Wildman.
Off the coast of the Atlantic Ocean in New England states, there are several places where ships would be in danger if they should be caught in a storm. Somewhere I read a story about a crew of men whose responsibility was to rescue the men on any ship which ran into trouble in one of those areas. There was a storm at sea and the wind was blowing real hard. The waves were extremely high and forceful. The storm was accompanied by heavy rain and much lightning. It was the middle of the night when the call came to the rescue squad that a ship was in trouble and needed help to evacuate their crew. The captain of the rescue squad woke his men up and told them to prepare to sail. As the group went out into the night, many of the men realized that it would be a very dangerous operation to attempt a rescue in such conditions. Still, the men were prepared to cast off and help the ship in distress. Just before they were ready to leave the safety of the harbor, a member of the rescue squad who was relatively new approached the captain. His face expressed much concern as he spoke. "Sir," he said to the captain, "do you think we should go out in these conditions? We might not come back." The old captain, a veteran of many years at aiding ships in distress, slowly turned to the young seaman and gave this reply: "We don't have to come back, son, but we do have to go out." Too often in life, the fear of failure keeps us from setting sail on a course of goodness. We are afraid someone might not understand. We are afraid we might not be successful in our venture, and so we stay in the relative safety of the harbor. Very few great and worthwhile missions can be accomplished without taking the risk of sailing through some stormy seas. There's always the danger, once we chart our course over the stormy seas, that we might not return. And it is precisely this danger that keeps many people from ever leaving the shore. When Columbus set sail for India, he had no assurance that he would return. Indeed, he was told by many people that he would sail off the edge of the world and that his ships would never stop falling. But he had to go because he was captured by a dream that could change the life of man for good. When Jesus began his journey from Galilee to Jerusalem, his disciples probably tried to discourage him. They knew of the possibility that he would be killed in that holy city, that he would never come back. But still, he went. He didn't have to come back. He only had to go. Quite often in life, we'll find this to be true. We don't have to come back. We only have to go.
This has been My Turn with Don Wildman, a production of the American Family Association.
Hello, everyone. I'm Tim Wildman, president of American Family Association and American Family Radio. Hey, just returned from the presidential inauguration of President Trump and Vice President Vance. And let me tell you something, folks. There's an excitement in the air among millions and millions and millions of Americans who are ready for some common sense changes to come to our country. Guess what? We're going to Washington, D.C. again for our Spiritual Heritage Tour in June and September. We're over halfway full. If you want to go with us to see our nation's capital from a distinctively Christian heritage viewpoint, then you need to contact us. You need to go to wildmangroup.com, WILDMON group.com. We're also going to Colonial Williamsburg, Jamestown, and Yorktown. It's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to Boston in October. For information on any of these tours, go to wildmangroup.com, WILDMON group.com.
For we know that if the earthly tent we live in is destroyed, we have a building from God, an eternal house in heaven, not built by human hands. 2 Corinthians 5:1.
American Family Radio. This is today's issues. Email your comments to comments@afr.net. Past broadcasts of today's issues are available for listening and viewing in the archive at afr.net. Now, back to more of today's issues.
Are you getting tired of winning, people? President Trump, I know not everybody listening voted for President Trump, but the vast, vast majority of you did. And you voted for President Trump because you wanted to bring common sense and good government back to our country. Of course, the left screamed, Hitler, fascist,
Right.
racist. Well, guess what? That didn't work. A majority of Americans, both the popular vote and the Electoral College, said we're not buying the sky is falling if Trump's elected.
Right.
We're buying that the sky is falling if Harris is elected.
Yes.
But so
Or
Trump
continue
won.
to fall.
Trump won despite his shortcomings as a politician. Now, don't tell him he has shortcomings, because he doesn't believe that, which is fine.
Yeah.
But he is rocking and rolling as president, and he is stacking up win upon win upon win in terms of what he's been able to do. I am stunned, quite frankly.
I am too.
I mean, it's
shock and awe.
Here's what happened. He evidently, and like most leaders, he doesn't know all the details of all these executive orders that he's signing.
Right.
Okay. But they fit in with his ideology of America first, of common sense, and also fighting back against the secular progressive left, which hates our traditions. They hate our country. They hate our religion.
They hate God.
They hate God, these people, and Trump realizes that, and the team around him does. And they're not playing that game that happened in Trump's first administration where the deep state got the best of him in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
He was prepared.
Yes.
He was prepared. He and his team were prepared day one on how to disassemble the deep state secular progressives who want to who have the terrible intentions for our country. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely.
So everything he's doing now is just win after win after win. These executive orders, for example, I've read a couple of them, and I was up to like 4 a.m. reading one of them the other night. It was very fascinating.
Oh, I'm sure.
The page turner.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Page
turner. I got it on Chapter 17 of the Executive Order.
Yeah.
4044, which was
that's a good one. That's a good
dash
one.
-21. Oh yeah. Have you read it?
Oh man, yeah. That's
anyway.
That's awesome.
He is just knocking it out of the park with the winds. He signed an executive order where we send the illegal criminal aliens to if their home country won't take them back, we send them to get to Guantanamo Bay.
Yeah.
So he's sending the military down to the border. Pete Hegseth is doing a bang up job. It's just Pam Bondi was just. I mean, it's just win after win after win, and
speaking about winning too,
Yeah.
he also within days of being confirmed or officially becoming the president, being inaugurated, he also went straight to North Carolina and was concerned about those that had suffered in the tornado, a hurricane that came through. As a result, he's also been going to California for the wildfires as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So anyway, listen.
Try to give you a
speaking, that's a good segue. It's called a segue.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah.
Wasn't as clean as I wanted, but
right.
I tried to help.
You got there.
I got there.
What's so funny?
No. What's so funny?
Am I missing something here?
No. You were going to say something. I don't know. I think what we have.
I think we need to move on.
Is a failure to communicate.
I think we need. Yeah. That was from Cool Hand Luke, right?
What we have here
is a failure to
communicate.
You mean to mock a Southern accent for you, real quick? I can do it.
Major Payne.
As a native Mississippian, I'm very good at mocking Southern accents.
Major Payne.
You're listening to Today's Issues. That's the name of this show on the American Family Radio Network. And joining us now is our friend and colleague, M.D. Perkins. He's a producer and director with our American Family Studios. Good morning, M.D.
Good to be with y'all.
M.D., your family was affected by the wildfires out in the Los Angeles area. Tell us about this.
Yeah, my brother and his family ended up losing their house. They live in Pasadena, so there were two kind of major fire events. There was the Pacific Palisades there on the shore of the coast. That got a lot of the news coverage, but further inland, about 30 miles away, there was the Eaton fire, and that impacted Altadena and Pasadena, kind of there in the east of Los Angeles area. And so, I mean, over 10,000 structures destroyed.
You mean in Pasadena?
In Pasadena itself, yeah.
That's where the Rose Bowl is, too, right?
Right,
I mean, this is that's where they have the Rose Bowl parade, and this is a very well-known part of
Yeah,
LA.
it's a historic community. I mean, it's beautiful. It's separate from, and it's operated completely under its own jurisdiction. So it's distinct from Los Angeles.
When did this happen?
This happened January 8th.
Now, when did you first learn from your brother? Did he call you or get an email, or did you see it on the news and you said, how did this develop?
Well, in our family group text on that Wednesday night, so the Wednesday of the 7th, there were all of these windstorms that were happening in the area, the Santa Ana winds. And so we were aware that there was a lot of wind damage already occurring in the area, trees down, limbs on houses, things like this. And so my brother was trying to assess the situation there and lock some things down. And then at 6 o'clock that Wednesday evening, or that Tuesday evening rather, there was an alert that there was a fire in the mountains about 3 miles away from Pasadena. And because of the nature of the winds, these were being monitored very closely, because once those winds start picking up, I mean, that wildfire can spread incredibly fast. And so it was by 5:30 in the morning, they were receiving a knock on their door vigorously from their neighbor to get out, because the house across the street was consumed in flames.
Oh my goodness!
What?
And
the house across the street?
Yeah.
Were they able to get any of their valuables? I mean, they're like.
They had been monitoring it, so they had already packed up the car, expecting to not have to evacuate. But then when they got that in the night or early in the morning, they were immediately able to retreat.
So when did they learn their house had burned to the ground?
I mean, it was several hours later. They were getting kind of conflicting reports from some of the neighbors that stuck around, because in their particular neighborhood, this was a spot fire that jumped off from the other main area. So this is just a little bit outside. It wasn't like a huge wall of fire coming through, but the way that the fires were spreading was the embers were getting carried over by the wind, maybe several blocks over, igniting, brush or dead leaves or things in palm trees and things like that, and kind of igniting and then burning from there. So
some people do have their private security cameras attached to their cell phones.
Yeah.
And so there
were people who had that, and they were
literally watching
things.
their own house. But I thought that's horrible
Yeah.
to have to watch your house burn down on your home security system on your cell phone.
Yeah, and I'm just kind of surprised that neighbors stayed.
Yeah.
So, we've heard a lot of stories about there not being enough water for fire departments, first responders to combat fires. Was that the case, like the house across the street? Were the firemen able to combat that fire and just didn't succeed, or were they without water?
As far as I'm aware, in the Pasadena, Altadena area, they weren't dealing with the water shortages that were happening in the Palisades. So I wasn't aware of necessarily a lack of water. It was more just that the fires were moving so quickly that they weren't able to address them all.
Yeah.
And so that's what happened in this case.
Too many fires.
Yeah,
at one
things
time.
burned across the street. My brother's house, the walls were still standing, and the fire department was able to get there in time to preserve, pieces of the house.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like the house across the street that kind of first ignited, which was just total ashes and kind of, just almost matchstick looking debris sticking up.
So you went there to help
I did.
your brother and his family. They have children, you said?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They do.
So what were you guys able to do? Just pick through the remains of the house to try to find? Is that what you're?
Part of it's just helping them assess the situation. I mean, to be faced with a total loss like that was devastating, especially a house that they've put so much of their own time and energy into fixing up the rooms. And my brother does a lot of renovation work, and so this was a house that they were cultivating themselves, and kind of their forever home, really. So to lose it all was devastating, and just not even sure immediately what were the next steps to take. So helping them kind of think through that situation, give them some emotional support as we returned to the house, see if there was anything salvageable. Yeah. We were able to remove a few things that then they could assess later whether they wanted to keep them or not. And, just kind of, it's amazing the community outreach that was happening in the area. I mean, there was a lot of goodwill, a lot of donation centers, a lot of people immediately trying to offer some kind of help and aid, whether that was in the form of donations. I mean, they were able to reacquire some living room furniture from a friend of a friend who had a storage unit.
This is
like
those kind of circumstances are just extraordinary, because this is not a house that had, something got out of the fireplace and burned the house down, and it's in isolation.
Yeah.
And you can move somewhere else and maybe rebuild that particular structure again. You're talking about thousands of homes. Maybe thousands. I don't know.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, thousands of homes and all those people, where are they going to live?
Right.
I mean, there's not like rental property for that number of people.
Yeah.
I mean, so people would, I guess just move somewhere else. Those houses that burned, let's say you had really good insurance, you'd have enough to rebuild, but the costs of wood would probably be skyrocketing. I don't even know how to.
Yeah, there's so many. Driving
variables.
into the area was really weighty.
Yeah.
Because as you're driving up the street, we were staying kind of in the central Pasadena area, driving to the north, and as you're driving up Lake Avenue, you start looking out and you see a job center here, and it's just flooded with people coming out.
Yeah.
You look over here, a parking lot, and there's a donation center. Over here, another donation center. Here's a tent set up with a long line of people receiving some kind of aid. Here's a line of National Guard vehicles kind of coming down the road. And then you kind of go back into the neighborhood, and you realize it is more than one person, one family affected. I mean, this is an entire community and generations of people who would have lived in this area, especially the Altadena community. Several generations of black families that had lived in this area, especially, who had acquired houses, back in the in the 40s and 50s and passed them down generationally, and now having to face the reality of rebuilding and things like that.
What's your brother and his family going to do now?
They do plan to rebuild. They love their neighborhood. They love their neighbors. They love the party.
Well, what are they going to do in the interim?
In the interim, they've signed a 1-year lease on another piece of property that they're staying in the Pasadena area, still in the same school district for their daughter to still go to the same school. And so they were they're producer-minded people, kind of like jump into action immediately. So, their situation may have been better than some people who were sitting waiting for a phone call from the insurance company or things like that. They weren't going to sit around and necessarily wait. So they were at an advantage from some, and they have had a better experience with their insurance provider than some of the stories.
How do you process this spiritually?
Well, there's a lot of ways to look at it. I mean, just, one of the passages that was weighing on me was in, I believe it's 1 Corinthians. It talks about the fire testing the merit of each one's works. And, obviously that's
literally
of the final judgment, but, you're confronted face to face with eternity in a situation like this. And you're thinking about the bigger picture of things, both in terms of your life, the community, and all of those things. So I couldn't help but be thinking along some of those terms.
Yeah. How many, fortunately, most people were able to a vast majority of people were able to get out and get away and to heed the warnings. So loss of life was at a minimum.
Right.
Losing one person is tragic, but in the Palisades, and then you're talking about hundreds of thousands of people affected, and only a few people, 20.
It's amazing that the loss of life was as small as it was, considering how quickly the fires moved and totally
so
devastating.
Unpredictable.
They were, exactly.
I just wondered. I don't want to be a Debbie Downer here, but I just wonder how you're going to be able to rebuild in an area where this could happen again next year.
Well, the Pasadena area specifically has never really been a wildfire threat.
Okay, that area has not.
That's part of what's so surprising about it is how far the fires came in, how quickly they moved in. There's other parts of the city that are a little more of a wildfire threat than Pasadena, but,
All right. Well, MD Anderson, excuse me, MD Anderson. I'm thinking about the Cancer Treatment Center that people go to. My MD Perkins has do you call that a Freudian slip? Freud gets blamed for everything we do wrong.
Hey, before we let him go, can I ask him a separate question? Is that all right? I know we kept him for a while. We wanted to talk to you a little bit about an article you wrote, and this will give an opportunity for us to point people to American Family News. But you wrote an article for AFN, and folks, you can go to afn.net to get all kinds of great stories like this. But you wrote, you have an interest, part of your niche in terms of study and writing is on the subject of homosexuality and gender confusion. You wrote a great piece for AFN, Public Opinion on Same-Sex Marriage, because that's changed, right, since the Obergefell decision in 2015.
Yeah.
These kinds of legal decisions, people say you can't legislate morality, but you kind of can.
Right.
When laws are written or Supreme Court rulings are issued.
Yeah, you actually are legislating morality.
Very literally.
And it changes people's opinion.
It does. Yeah, I mean, the current public support of Americans behind same-sex marriage has grown to 69%. When you want to see the grand picture of it, go back to 1988 when the first question was ever asked publicly about same-sex marriage, and there were only 12% in favor, 73% opposed. So you've completely flipped the script over these last 40 years. And there's so many things behind that. If you're thinking about reasons for it, I mean, you've got the mass normalization that's happened with education, psychology, business and the arts, media depictions. This gets back to the bread and butter of what AFA has been focused on for a long time, dealing with pop culture, entertainment, news stories, how things are framed. It's interesting, in 2011 is when you started to see this term marriage equality jump into the mix rather than the term tolerance. a lot of the framing around same-sex marriage had been placed on tolerance, but the term marriage equality, of course, has kind of this bigger
The left
aspect.
always wins the
It's
words.
great
man.
marketing.
Yeah, the left always wins the words.
And 2011 was actually the year that it flipped from majority opposition to same-sex marriage to majority support same-sex marriage, to where it's grown some over the years. Of course, the legal decisions, pornography proliferation really is another part of that. There's a study that's been done on that that says porn use is a very significant predictor of support of same-sex marriage.
And it doesn't have to be just support for homosexual pornography. It's just when even heterosexuals begin to degrade their own sexuality, they become more accepting.
Exactly. And then there's just, the uncertain and unclear witness sometimes of the church to not always speak clearly on these issues or as definitively as you would want. So, yeah, I think there's a lot of reasons. Obviously, any sociological issue is going to have a complex number of factors leading into it.
Very good points. By the way, where is this article available?
This is on American Family News, AFA.net. Chris, do you have?
I do, and I have shared it for him on our Today's Issues Facebook page.
Great. So, folks, if you go to our Facebook page, Today's Issues, you will see a link to this story. It's so well done. We're going to let you go, but and maybe we'll have you back to discuss the impact of the homosexual, the LGBTQ movement on our young people, because that's really driving the acceptance and embrace of not just like tolerance, like you're saying, but full-throated support for this movement is so strong amongst our young people.
And it puts a lot of challenges for the future.
Is that probably because of...
Let's go ahead and continue with this conversation because I think it's important. What did you just say?
Well, your article, why don't you go ahead and address that a lot of the change is being driven by the opinions of young people. And is this a product only of education?
Yeah, but where are the young people getting their opinion?
Yeah, that's what I'm asking. If it's coming from schools or if it's also coming from
pop culture.
Yeah, I think it's the mix of all of those things. I mean, you have now a generation that's grown up only knowing gay marriage as kind of normal and accepted in society. And so even the thought of removing that or rethinking that is it sounds unkind. It sounds, intolerant and all of these kinds of words that get thrown around. So, yeah, I mean, the opinion that's been settled on this is there's indoctrination that's happening. There's normalization that's happening. There's the pop cultural acceptance and the way that this is.
Is the trans thing gone too far, though?
Well, it certainly has gone too far.
Even for the people who would otherwise say, I accept LGBT.
There's a lot of there's the LGBT moniker, as much as it is together politically, there's so much infighting between every aspect, every letter in that.
A lot of the LGs are going, I ain't part of T.
Yeah.
So they're not
there's gays against
they're not being
groomers and
inclusive.
things like that are.
I'm ready to vote the T out.
I caught you, Chris.
Well, one of the things I find fascinating, disturbing, but still fascinating as you're just observing this, is that for years, and this is across cultures, the percentage of any particular culture that identified as homosexual, as what we call LGBTQ, was 2.4%. It was usually under 3%.
Right.
And that included a lot of kind of the bisexuals, that number in it. But in your article, you said for Gen Z, those born between 1997 and 2012, more than 22% of Gen Z identify as LGBTQ.
Right.
That's extraordinary.
That's not true.
Well,
I'm not saying that they don't identify. I'm not denying the stats.
Right.
You're citing. I'm saying that means it's trendy. It's cool.
There is a lot of social.
I'm going to get applauded at school if I say I'm trans.
Mm-hmm. Now
that's what it is.
Another thing you would even acknowledge too is that it's not just saying that I'm internally this way. It's also a rethinking of what does it mean? What is sexual attraction? What is because even the idea of sexual orientation is not just built around sexual attraction. It's also based around romantic attraction, friendships, and these kinds of things go into that definition. So a young person thinking like, I don't really connect with people of my own sex, so or I don't connect with the other sex so much, so maybe I am gay, or maybe I am bisexual at least,
or
so
sexually fluid.
Right. And so kind of the long-term identification there is not something that anyone is really even tracking. So how many of these 22% of Gen Zers will continue to identify as LGBT, later into life? But
10 years from now, you come back and do that survey, that's going to be cut way down, like half or under a bit, because like I was saying, I think this can't be human nature, because over time, 2.5% basically has been the homosexual, lesbian number.
And we've been told it was 10% forever.
Yeah. And it's
never been 10%.
And that was because of Kinsey's study. Anyway, there's a whole thing on the 10% lie.
Yeah.
Don't leave me 30 seconds, okay?
Okay. But I was just going to say just really quickly, the reason I think this is important, and I don't disagree, Tim, there's a lot of young people who it is cool. Okay, that's the way they think of it. But they do vote. And if they grow up thinking that, okay.
No, go.
No.
Hey, we're going to come back after the news, and we got Stephen McDowell joining us. We're going to say, we're going to bid adieu to MD, but you can come back and comment on the topic.
Sure, that's what I'll do.
Okay.
Are you done, Ed?
That's the music. I'm done.
Okay.
I'll give you credit, though, Dad. That was wise. You looked at the clock and was like, no, this is a good conversation.
Yeah.
Let's just
Let's
give Dad a hand. Good call, Dad.
Good call, Dad.
I can't take all the credit.
And the article is linked on our Facebook page.
Go to our Today's Issues Facebook.
Folks, you need to read it.
I mean, I can take most of the credit, but I can't take all the credit. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
I don't
But you're humble.
I don't seem like a credit hog.
Right.
Here.
Credit hog.
Okay, we'll be back momentarily with more of Today's Issues
Thanks,
right
MD.
here
Thank you.
on the American Family Radio Network. Stay with us.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast may not necessarily reflect those of the American Family Association or American Family Radio.
Faith, family, freedom. American Family Radio.
When you hear us mention the AFR app, you probably think about your smartphone. We do have apps for Apple and Android users, but it doesn't stop there. If you have an Alexa, we've got you covered. But wait, there's more. Sorry. There's also an AFR app for Roku or Apple TV. So many ways you can listen to your favorite show, podcast, or music. Find out more at afr.net/apps.
This is American Family Radio, a listener-supported ministry of the American Family Association.
American Family News, I'm Rusty Pugh. Army recruiting is shattering records under new leadership, Jeff Manasso reports.
After several years in crisis and not being able to meet recruitment goals, the U.S. Army reports its most productive December in 12 years and best recruiting January numbers in 15 years, with new Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth on X saying that America's next generation of soldiers want to serve under the bold and strong America First leadership of President Donald Trump. The Army is also set to dramatically expand basic training units by spring. That would allow the Army to train up to 9,600 new recruits per year, with the goal of bringing in 61,000 active duty soldiers this fiscal year that began in October. Jeff Manasso, Fox News.
A group of Democratic lawmakers staged a protest outside of the USAID headquarters on Monday to denounce DOGE and Director Elon Musk's promise to eliminate wasteful government spending agencies. This comes as Musk said he and his DOGE team shut down USAID over the weekend because of their wasteful spending. Alabama Senator Katie Britt says Democrats' priorities are out of line.
Democrats are out having an actual meltdown, a 4-year-old meltdown, not over dollars that they believe should be going to our veterans who have served this country honorably, not for dollars that they believe should be helping a single mom get on their feet, not for dollars that they believe should be securing our border and keeping Americans safe and secure, but they are crying over these dollars.
And Fox News contributor Joe Concha gives us a few examples of where U.S. aid money goes.
$15 million out of USAID to, quote, advance diversity, equity, and inclusion in Serbia's workplaces and business communities, because that's in the U.S. interest, right? Or $6 million to fund tourism in Egypt. What do they need our money for, right? I could go on and on. $2 million for sex changes and LGBT activism in Guatemala.
What's in your wallet?
Senators Bernie Sanders and Josh Hawley are proposing a 10% limit on credit card interest rates.
Bernie Sanders says America is being ripped off by the credit card companies. When they institutions charge over 25% interest on credit cards, they are engaged in what he calls extortion and loan sharking. The conservative Republican from Missouri, Hawley, says America's drowning in credit card debt. Issuers are getting richer and richer by hiking interest rates to the moon. It's not just wrong, it's exploitative.
Fox's Jeff Flock reporting. Wikipedia, the online encyclopedia used by more than 1 billion people around the world each month, is blacklisting any and all conservative news sources from being used as source material and putting everything it says about conservative topics and people in the worst light possible, according to a new study. Steve Jordahl has more.
Media Research Center, Free Speech America did the research and found that right-leaning news sources like Breitbart, The Daily Caller, Daily Mail, Newsmax, and OANN are literally blacklisted, the word Wikipedia uses, as being utterly unreliable. The Atlantic, Mother Jones, ProPublica, and National Public Radio are used verbatim. MRC's Dan Schneider says it's a complete censorship of conservative sources.
100% of right-leaning news outlets are blackballed. Are prohibited from being used as sources for anything on Wikipedia.
President Trump's wiki page, for example, states as fact, quote, Trump's rhetoric and actions inflame anger and exacerbate distrust through an us versus them narrative. Trump explicitly and routinely disparages racial, religious, and ethnic minorities, end quote.
So if you pull up Donald Trump, all of the descriptions of Donald Trump are going to be determined by the New York Times, the Washington Post, NPR, all of the bad actors that are known to have both a left-wing bias and a political agenda.
The study says Wikipedia used to be reliable but ran off the rails under former CEO Catherine Maher. Schneider says there's a good chance the bias will go down as history.
It's a bunch of left-wingers with a real hardcore political agenda, and they cast judgment on people and determine how people are going to be described.
I'm Steve Jordahl.
On Wall Street, the S&P has slipped 0.3%, the Dow down 79 points, and the Nasdaq Composite fell 0.6%. For American Family News, I'm Rusty Key.
8 Days of Hope is supported by a combination of donations from listeners and business partners like Provia. Provia is a manufacturer of residential doors, windows, siding, stone, and metal roofing. Provia is committed to serving their customers and sharing Christ in order to let our light shine before others so they may see our good works and give glory to our Father who is in heaven. More about Provia and their products at provia.com.
Today's Issues continues on AFR with your host, Tim Wildman, President of the American Family Association.
Hey, welcome back, everybody, to today's Issues on the American Family Radio Network for this Wednesday, February the 5th, 2025. Thanks for listening to AFR. I'm Tim with Ed and Wesley and Chris. Again, we want to thank welcome our new listeners in the greater Birmingham area and Alabama and Tuscaloosa, Alabama. We've got 2 new stations on the air. We flipped the switch on those just a handful of days ago. So we welcome those folks who are listening. What do you know? Is it 97.7?
I think 97.7.
That's in Birmingham.
And then I forget the other one.
I think it's 88 point. What is it? 88 point what in Tuscaloosa?
88.5 in Tuscaloosa.
Okay, 88. I was thinking of this because there may be...
I was quiet. Everyone I had in my head was wrong.
That's why it's wise not to speak up sometimes.
Yeah.
Let other people talk and get it wrong.
Is this information on our website now? I'll share that.
It is.
Okay.
Go to afr.net. We have a station guide listing, and it's got all of our dial numbers there.
Yes. The point of me mentioning this is people may be listening going, I have friends or family in Birmingham, Tuscaloosa, I want to give them where on the dial they can find us.
Right.
So in the Birmingham area, it's 97.7, and in Tuscaloosa, it's 88.5 FM. So again, welcome. You're listening to today's Issues, Tim. Wesley, you wanted to make a point before we move on to our next topic?
Yes, sir. I was just going to mention that anytime we discuss the LGBTQ issue, that I want to remind or introduce to our new listeners that we have a resource, a product that we created here at American Family Studios called In His Image, and it's a movie based on the issue of LGBTQ issue, and it comes at it from a biblical, a scientific, and a personal experience, a testimonial angle, and all three of those, and I believe in that order. And it's completely for free. So you can go to inhisimage.movie. That's inhisimage.movie. And from there, you can watch it. Also, you can share it with others as well.
It's a documentary. And by the way, it's an award-winning documentary. It has also been translated into 6 different languages.
Translated. I see what you did there.
What?
Translated.
Oh, no, I wouldn't think of that. Thinking of that.
It's gone woke.
Good.
Oh, my bad.
It has literally been translated into 6 languages. I think Italian, Bulgarian, German. I forget which countries.
Over a million people have watched it.
Well, yeah, we say over 1 million people have watched it. It's probably a lot higher than that,
right,
but we can't prove it. But it's been around the world. It's been shown around the world. It's been shown at churches. So we have no way of counting that. But that's not the point anyway. What the thing I'm trying to get across to those who are listening is this is a powerful film that where people actually share and testify to how God changed their lives.
It ministered to people. I mean, in a sincere way.
Yes. So people from all over have told us about how powerful this is, and it's free, folks. So now, if you want to buy a copy, a DVD, you have to pay for that. But if you want to watch it, you go to inhisimage.movie, and just at that website, over about 500,000 people have watched it there. So,
all right,
inhisimage.movie.
.movie.
It's a website is usually .com, .net, .whatever.
Right.
But it's .movie, right?
Inhisimage.movie.
All right. By the way, what's the Q? Is that queer? Is that what that means?
It can be either queer or questioning.
Okay, questioning.
I didn't know that.
Because when I was a kid, the word queer was an
insult.
An insult.
Yeah.
So I didn't know if the movement itself had adopted the word.
Well, they use the word
questioning.
You're about to go down a rabbit hole.
No,
they've actually added on.
Rabbits are called hares.
But it's called plus.
Too.
Yeah.
Yes, it's called plus because there's more than.
They can't keep adding a letter, otherwise it's longer than the alphabet.
But in the new administration, there's 2 genders.
Yes.
Executive order for that.
Right.
Keep winning.
So, all right, you're listening to Today's Issues on American Family Radio. Well, we every month I get a list of downloads of our American Family Radio podcast. All our shows here we offer in podcast form. And some shows aren't necessarily on the radio, but they're on our podcast page. And we wanted to make you aware of a brand new podcast that we have weekly with historian Stephen McDowell, president of the Providence Foundation. If you love history, you're going to love Stephen's weekly podcast where he delves into history and the Christian influence and heritage of our country in particular. Stephen is the author of the bestseller America's Providential History. That's the name of the book. And joins us now. Good morning, Stephen.
Good morning, Tim and fellas. It's great to be with you.
Hey, what are you getting to be outside today there in Charlottesville? Is it nice weather? Are you traveling?
Well, yesterday was nice. I was out on the golf course yesterday. Today is not so nice, but should be nice Friday.
Now, why do you live in Charlottesville?
Well, Charlottesville is a beautiful little city that's full of history. Thomas Jefferson's home is here. His university is here. And I've lived here for 41 years. 41 years ago, I came and helped start the Providence Foundation, and I've lived here ever since.
Yeah, I knew the answer to that question because Steve and I have been friends for a long time. But it isn't a coincidence that he has the Providence Foundation and his headquarters is in the home of Thomas Jefferson.
Yeah,
you know, and so much history there in Charlottesville. All right, so Stephen, tell us about your new podcast here on American Family Radio.
Well, it's called America's Providential History. And what we look at is God's hand in our history, because God not only created everything, us and everything in this earth and universe, but God watches over his creation, actively is involved in his creation, which means he's involved in history. He came down into history. He's working through history to accomplish his plan and purpose for man. So in this podcast, we're going to look at God's hand in history. Now we're going to center in on America's history, but we'll touch on how God did things leading up to the birth of America as well. Because when you look at the providence of God in history, one, you receive great encouragement. Encourages you. The God we serve is directing and in charge of things, and I can have great hope he will take care of my life as well as he's involved in the events that are taking place in our nation and in the nations of the world today. And so I think when people that come and listen to these, you're not just going to hear stories of history, which you will, and stories, by the way, I didn't learn in school, and most people aren't learning in school because God isn't liked too much in our government schools today. You'll learn those stories, but more than that, you're going to gain insight into God's purposes for mankind. You know, the founders of America were a firm believer in the providence of God. In fact, the Declaration of Independence closes, these people that gave us this document, gave us this nation, had a, quote, firm reliance on the protection of divine providence. So the whole birth of our nation is built upon this idea that God in his providence watches over us, directing events of history. So this is what we're going to explore. I'm excited. Thank you guys for hosting this and inviting me to do this podcast. Yeah. We started just a couple of weeks ago. I think we're just on the third one. We're going to have a new one every Tuesday, release those. And over the years, we're going to cover lots of things, lots of great stories and principles that are applicable for us today.
All right, there are two podcasts already up, America's Providential History, that you're gonna love.
There's three.
There's three up. Okay, there was two up yesterday, three up today. So I haven't looked in the last few hours.
Held accountable for that. No.
My apologies. Okay, there are three podcasts that Stephen's done up on our website. So what you need to do, again, if you like or love history, you're going to really enjoy Stephen's America's Providential History podcast, released weekly on Tuesdays. Go to the website, afr.net, then click on podcast. Do it, Ed. Let me watch you do it there.
Well, yes.
Is it as simple as I'm saying?
It went to afr.net.
Yes.
And then there's a drop-down menu at the top. There's a list of choices. You click on podcasts, and it's not actually a drop-down menu. You go to a second page.
A banner.
Podcast lineup.
There's banner.
America's Providential History is right there on the top.
Yeah.
Say banner one more time for us.
Yeah, sorry. His banner over me is love.
Amen. Amen.
Huh?
You know, this is kind of like a high school or college course.
Yeah.
That you
really is.
Good point.
Yeah.
So go and check it out, folks. Stephen McDowell, our guest, his podcast. It's a new show that we have on our network, on our podcast page. So afr.net. Click on podcast, and boom, there you are at the America's Providential History banner. Wesley, go ahead.
Hey, Stephen, what would be the reason, knowing that you're going to be doing these podcasts weekly and all the things that you could cover, and like you said, you've been, the Providential Foundation has been...
Providence Foundation.
Providence Foundation has been founded and been going on for 41 years. Out of all the ones that you could, podcasts you could do, what would make you choose the first one being the Bible, Rock of Our Republic?
Well, I think that it's a great summary of how without God in the Bible, there would be no United States of America. Of course, without God, there would be no history at all, because he is the author of all history. But this is just a brief summary of how the people who came and settled America were people of the book. They carried the Bible with them in their heart, but also they had a desire, how do we build our life, our family, our church, and our civil society based upon the principles in the Bible? Because they believe what the Bible teaches, if we obey his precepts and use them in our life and civil community, we'll be blessed. And so we look at that first one, an overview of how the Bible formed the foundation of our civil law. The Bible is the reason why we started schools and colleges. The Bible is the source of our founding charters and documents. It was shaped the worldview and thinking of the settlers. So I think it's just a great introduction overall of God's hand. And, of course, in future ones, we're going to go in more detail of things.
Yeah.
So that's why I chose that just as a great introduction to the topic.
All right. Thank you, Stephen, for being on. We'll visit with you from time to time about the podcast, and we're happy to have you as part of our podcasting team here.
Thanks a lot, Tim.
Okay.
Appreciate it very much.
Okay, bye-bye. That's Stephen McDowell, the president of the Providence Foundation, whom I might add has been going with us on our tours for 20-plus years now. Stephen and I have been doing the tours together, and Wesley and Walker help us out. They do some tours themselves. So the tours, I'm going to segue right here.
Hey, segue.
I'm going to segue right into the tours. You spell segue for me, Ed.
Seguay.
I think that's
with a lot of confidence, Ed. A lot of confidence.
I think that's something you ride on.
Segue.
You jump on a Segway.
Yeah.
Right across town.
Segue.
Is that how? Who knows?
I'm hoping.
All right.
Hoping that's
well,
how you spell
we'll get the results on that in a minute. All right. But listen, we have the tours coming up this year of Colonial Williamsburg, Jamestown, and Yorktown. That's one tour in June. And then that's back-to-back with our tour of Washington, D.C. and Mount Vernon. So if you wanted to spend 7 days with us, you can go with us. We'll take care of you the whole time, unless you misbehave.
And then you take care of them in a different way.
Then you find your own ride back home. But as long as you behave and act right, then you can stay on the bus with us and be with us for 7 days, and we'll do all that. We'll do Williamsburg to D.C., and that's in June and September. Those trips are filling up, but if you want more information, go to wildmangroup.com, WILDMON group.com. And also is our tour of a new tour, Boston, Ed's old stomping ground.
Yes, that's going to be next October, is it?
Yeah. Yes, we ought to get you signed up for that.
Maybe I should.
We need to talk about that.
Yeah, okay.
But Ed grew up in the Boston area, and we're going to Boston. Wesley and Walker and yours truly and Allison, my wife, and Stephen and Timothy Barton of the Wall Builders. We're all going to go see the Boston and the greater Boston area with
lots of history.
Lexington and Concord and so the Freedom Trail. It's amazing. I did that in July. Allison and I did. We went there. So we're going to do that next October, and that tour is almost over half full.
Yeah, we're on the second.
So it's amazing the response we're getting. People are excited about learning about God's hand on America, and they want to go have fun with fellow Christians from around the country. And we eat well, we laugh, we have a good time, and we see
and learn.
And we learn.
Hey, right before
Wildman, WILDMON group.com is where all the information is on the tours I've just mentioned. Go ahead, Wesley.
Well, right before we had Stephen on, I mentioned about In His Image, and then I said that Trump has signed an executive order on men and there being only two genders, and I know we've got some audio on that.
We do, yes. Building off of his recent executive order saying there are only two genders, those being male and female, President Trump today is delivering on a campaign promise he made about 2.5 years ago, that being an executive order banning males from female sports. We've long thought this was coming. We've heard it was coming, and apparently today he is making it official. Somebody that is excited for this executive order is former University of Pennsylvania swimmer Paula Scanlon. She was on Fox talking about this. She is still in favor of federal legislation to make this permanent, but nonetheless, she is excited by what Trump has done here. Clip 9.
But the biggest thing that I'm thinking to myself is the fact that we even have to do this and spend time and sign an executive order to say something as common sense as men do not belong in women's sports. But this is just the beginning. Ultimately, this issue will not be over until we get this passed in all three branches of government, until we see cases won in the Supreme Court, until we see that Congress pass this. I want them to bring it because we need these senators on the record saying that they do not stand with women, because there's a lot of Democrats that are not going to vote for this, and we want them on the record saying that they believe men belong in women's sports.
Now, as she mentioned there, the Congress has passed this. The House did recently pass this with help from, I think, a couple of Democrats. That was Congressman Stubbe's bill. It's still waiting in the Senate. It's been there for a couple of weeks now.
Who is that we just heard?
Paula Scanlon. She swam with Will, wants to be known as Leah Thomas.
Now, has she not been on the program before?
She has been on this program. She travels the nation with people like Riley Gaines.
That's right.
She's been to Mississippi. I met her.
I think we interviewed her when you were out, Dad.
Pardon me?
Might have been.
I think we interviewed her.
Yeah, I think I was out.
Yeah.
But that's, do you have anything from President Trump on this?
Well, we have audio of him saying on the campaign trail that he would do this, and today is delivering on that promise. Clip 10.
Always remember, this is so easy. This will be done tomorrow. We will keep men out of women's sports. It's over.
I'm not sure the location for those remarks, but I heard him say those exact things at the Pray Vote Stand Summit, which AFA Action sponsors back in 2023.
Who's defending men and girls sports, or boys and girls sports?
The radical left. The radical left.
Can you name me a person?
The Democratic Party.
Elizabeth Warren.
The Democratic Party. Elizabeth Warren. All of Chuck Schumer. They're all defending it because they're arguing that, for example, Will Thomas, who with Riley Gaines kind of made this issue explode into the public consciousness. Right. They're saying he's not a man. Their argument to President Trump's statement right there is we're not talking about there are no men in women's sports. There are women in women's sports, and there are transgender women who are women.
Right. What are they transitioning from?
See, this is a sneaky question.
Yeah.
They're transitioning from male to female.
Oh, they were once male.
Yes.
Okay.
I mean that's.
But they're not male anymore.
That's.
You see where I'm going with it?
Yeah, oh, yeah. If there's no difference between men and women, then why do you need to transition?
Right. You just say it. Just speak it into existence.
Right.
Right.
But the Democratic Party has been the party that defends this insanity.
That's why they're losing elections too.
And they're doubling down on this.
This will be a big issue for them in the midterms.
If they don't cut it out, they will continue to lose elections.
That's a losing issue, even for the general public.
Right.
And
you could take your most hardcore Democrat out there who
voter,
and you say, do you want your daughter competing against a dude in volleyball or basketball or soccer? They're going to say, no, that's completely unfair.
Right.
That's going to be their initial reaction. Why? Because that's common sense.
Now there is a splintering on this topic. I mentioned a couple of weeks ago there, I forget the Democratic congressman's name from Massachusetts, but he came out and he said, I don't want my daughters competing with boys in sports. I don't know why I have to say this. He said, but if I do say it, I get blasted.
Seth
As
Moulton.
a transphobe.
That's it. What was his name?
Seth Moulton.
Moulton, yeah.
Congressman said he was a Democrat.
Yes.
Hopefully he gets primaried, and then they replace him with a hardcore lefty because
right.
Well, it's bad for the Democratic Party.
Right. Yeah.
Well, you know what? And these are people who say we need to follow science.
Mm-hmm. Men can get pregnant.
Right.
Remember during COVID, the lefties, you need to follow the science.
Because
remember that.
Because Trump, issued some of these executive orders, some of these schools and colleges started to remove, I'm just going to be as vague as possible here, folks, women's products from the male bathrooms. And there were Democrats arguing that you shouldn't do that because there are men who actually go through the process of menses.
Mm-hmm.
And they were defending this.
Yes.
And that kind of insanity doesn't seem to be going anywhere in terms of Democratic Party leadership.
Well, you mentioned Chuck Schumer. He's been pushing this Equality Act for many years, which is an ironic effort from him because we have the Religious Freedom Restoration Act today because of people like Chuck Schumer who wrote that bill back in the 90s when he was a congressman, and now he wants to just completely erase it and your religious rights.
Yeah.
Well, it's a losing issue.
Don't tell them that.
Well, that's a good point. For the liberals, it's the secular progressives.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. Well, we got only got I don't. This is too deep
run it
and
to the clock.
philosophical. Yeah, we only got a minute and a half. What do you got left over there, Chris?
Well,
we got a minute to go.
I will say this. I did see it mentioned yesterday on Town Hall and some other news outlets that President Donald Trump plans to be in attendance at the Super Bowl.
I saw that this morning.
Super Bowl where they have removed at the end of the end zone end racism.
Yes.
END racism.
Yeah, they're working they're backpedaling or working their way away from the DEI and the wokeism. That is the NFL.
Yeah.
And so that's
yeah, they had these. It's ever since George Floyd,
right.
and
yeah.
they decided to put these sayings on at the end of their
the
NBA,
BLM
the
saving
the BLM stuff. Yeah, end racism and stuff like that. So they're doing away with that.
Yeah,
Okay.
There's consequences for elections. And I do believe that everything rises and falls on leadership. And I think with the leadership and the Trump administration, that's what you get results of.
There is nothing more DEI than the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing more against DEI than the NFL. That's what I'm trying to say. Because the NFL is merit-based.
Yes, that is.
Either you can make a catch or throw the ball, or you can't. Either you can run fast or you can't.
That's
and there ain't no DEI.
You can either read defensive coverages or you can't if you're quarterback.
They don't go, hey,
and
we need some senior citizens out here to balance things out. Nobody does that. No, it's all
cutthroat too.
Yeah,
you can either perform or don't, or perform or you don't get signed.
Right, it's completely, totally
merit-based.
Merit-based. All right, we'll be back tomorrow with another edition of Today's Issues. Have a great day, everybody.